Hi everyone, this week's Parsha is Parshat Korach. Now in years past we've spoken about the interaction between Moshe and Korach and his Ada, Korach and his group that he operates with, but in short, for those of you who are joining us this year, the whole interaction between Moshe and Korach is that Korach and his group were envious, so to speak, that Aaron, Moshe's brother, got the priestly duties and they wanted to take on the priestly duties, and the story ends with the ground consuming Korach and his congregation, the group that was acting with him. So, let's talk about it a little bit. Korach pleads his case to Moshe at the beginning of the Parsha, and they go and they end up bringing these incense, and we see that Moshe's Aaron's is the correct one, and Moshe is correct for giving Aaron the priestlyhood and not Korach. But it's very interesting because the language that Moshe uses to, so to speak, rebuke Korach is the same language that's used. We've actually spoken about this in years past with the latter of the usages of this language. When Moshe asks God, pleads to God to go into the land of Israel, God responds the same way that Moshe responds to Korach in this week's Parsha. Now, how does God respond to Moshe over there? He says, Ravlach, right? You have Moshe. You have enough. Right? You don't need to go into the land of Israel. That was his punishment, right? So this word Rav has a negative connotation, a connotation of some kind of repercussions for an action. And in this week's parsha, Moshe uses this word Rav to Korach and his Edad and his group. He says, Rav lechem b'nei Levi. You, this group of the Levites, you have enough. You don't need the priestlyhood. You have enough with what you have. So the obvious question is, why is this phrase that Moshe uses here to Korach and his group negative? It appears to be okay. He's telling them that they have enough, and that's fine. So, I heard in the name of Rav Kluger from one of my Rebbeim, Rav Chaim Yegoda, that this usage of the word can be explained by mashal, by parable. So let's say you have someone who's struggling and he decides that he wants to go steal something, right? He needs to go steal something. So he ends up getting caught. Now the person that catches him can go about rebuking him in one of two ways. Either they could say, look, I know it's better. The parable is actually better that if they get caught and then they get brought to court, let's say, and the judge is the one rebuking this person. The judge says to the person, look, I understand circumstances might be difficult. You might be thinking a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, you broke our laws, and you have to be punished accordingly, or there has to be some kind of repercussion for your actions, right? That's one way of handling it. The other way of handling it is saying to the person, why would you go steal something? Look at everything you have already. It doesn't make any sense. You have a house, you're good, you have all this stuff. Why are you looking at the world this way? Why are you looking at it that you have to go steal something? So, bringing it back to this week's Parsha, that is exactly what Moshe is doing to Korach and his group. Instead of saying to them, reasoning with them by saying, look, I understand, but Aaron is the one that Hashem said that gets the priestlyhood, and I understand your claim, but it's not what we're going with. Instead, Moshe tells them, come on, what do you mean? Rav lechem, you have enough already. Go look at what you have. Why do you want this additional thing as well? So we actually see two psukim later that Moshe says, hamamat mikem, right? He says, again, look at everything you have, but this usage, hamamat mikem, is actually in a more positive way. We've looked at it in a more positive way, the Chazal, the rabbis, by saying that Moshe came back and actually phrased it out in a more reasoned way to Korach and his group, and that's why ultimately this is not considered such a negative episode on the part of Moshe. He makes up for it, but the usage of the word is very interesting, and also why it comes up again at the end when Moshe ends up pleading to God, and God says no to him entering the land of Israel. So my bracha to everyone this week is that we should all be able to look at difficult situations that we may be in or that we may see, and be able to come at them from a rational sense instead of an emotional sense, and really saying, instead of saying, look at how much you have and why would you go do that, consider the circumstances and say, I know things are difficult, or I know X, Y, or Z may be the case, and that's why you ended up doing that, and this is how we could fix it. And with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.